all the cameras to go on. So let me pod this up. Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. I've already done one show as a guest. I was a guest on a show just before I started today's show. We're listening to KUHSdenver.com. We're streaming to you every Friday at 11 o'clock. And today is a special day for me because I've got a colleague and who I call a friend on the show with me today. We're going to be talking about kids' safety through the eyes and the windows that are created by Boys and Girls Club of Colorado. And that's the executive director, Danielle Felder, is with me. Welcome this morning, you new mom, you.
Why, thank you. Yes, and if you hear the baby in the background, you know, this is what working from home looks like. Yeah, welcome to our new reality.
She's precious. That is, without being said, it's just an obvious thing that she's precious. I'm always interested and curious about the stories of new moms. Give me the one first thing that comes to mind as a new mom and your experience with your daughter. What keeps coming up in your head?
You know, right now we're in this really good time. So we're at 5 months, and she is giggling, and there's something about the giggle that just makes me feel so good, and it's just so rewarding because she's moving from newborn to infant, and I'm still grappling with the idea that I'm even a mom. So that in and of itself, when I look at her, is still mind-blowing. But that giggle, I tell you, I live for that giggle.
I'm still grappling with my progression from newborn to infant. I don't know if I want to really come out really early, be vulnerable like that. It's a struggle for me. So I can relate.
I can't wait to see you as a toddler, Lowell. I can't wait.
Oh, there are people that are waiting for that as well. That is quite an interesting thought. It's so funny. Hold on just a second. I gotta check on something here, making sure. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Well, he didn't give it to me. Darn it. Okay, well, that's just me talking out loud and the technical side of things that I have to deal with in the studio that pops up every once in a while. It's so interesting that happens. So, at any rate, we are here today with Danielle Felder, Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Colorado. And one of the things that has always interested me, but it's only until now that I had the chance to ask you, why a successful attorney in the corporate business world and with the education you've got and the tenacity, I mean, just all the characteristics that make up the definition of Danielle Felder, why did you go to a not-for-profit?
That transition isn't as hard as people seem to think it is, for sure. I worked in private practice for 6-7 years before realizing that the bleeding heart that I am and the reason I went to law school just wasn't being realized in that profession. And there's nothing against that. I have plenty of friends in it. I probably could have continued on if I wanted to. I kind of lost my passion for it along the way.
Yeah.
And like any good late-age millennial as I am, we care about our passions. Our passions are so important to us and what we decide to do. And so I had the privilege of being on a few boards for nonprofits that helped me make that transition a lot easier than you would think. And I'm a trial lawyer, so I'm not a corporate type who sits behind a computer. I've always been excited about working with people and being around people. So for me, switching into fundraising and development with a nonprofit it makes a ton of sense, and I do love it, which is very odd. I'm a different kind of person.
Well, it sounds to me though you progressed into, you had a process of evaluating. Not that you knew it in the moment, but the trial lawyer experience in corporate practice or in private practice, and you were on boards of not-for-profits. Those were kind of experiences that kind of like gave you some insight, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And when I left law, I had a moment of figuring out, where am I going from here? And so really tapped into my network, which was all not for profit, to be honest with you. Outside of law, that was where all of my connections were. And so it just kind of made that transition more seamless in just a matter of months.
Well, just like I've been reminded so many times, this isn't just about us. Today's topic is about kids and kids' safety, and what role that BGCC, Boys and Girls Club of Colorado, provides for that safety, but not just provide physical space. I've toured them, I've walked through them with you as well as without you or anybody else, just to be around the kids, and to me the focus is the fact that they have a focus. There's a building they can go to that's safe. Yes. And that they can find, continue to learn and find control of their own mind and body. But that's my take on it. Why is Boys and Girls Club's presence in a community so important for kids?
At the end of the day, Lowell, it is those relationships. There is something to be said about a young person who has an adult they trust outside of their family and parents to talk to about hard things, about what's going on in their life, about concerns they have, and how to address them in positive ways, in healthy ways. That's what Boys and Girls Clubs is. Those relationships with trusted adults, it is the cornerstone of helping keep kids safe, and it's also the reason why communities trust us, because our adults don't just come into communities and set up a Boys and Girls Clubs. You know, we're built from a community. The community has to decide that they want to bring in a club. They have to come together across different industries and different fields, so it's not just the nonprofit work, it's schools, it's parents, it's young people, it's companies. You know, that community buy-in is really important for a club. And our clubs, I have visited more than 48 of them. Of our 64, I visited about 48 before COVID. And what I will tell you, well, if you get a chance to see some of our more rural clubs as well, is they don't look the same. They don't necessarily feel the same, but they provide the same thing. And they respond to community need and youth needs. You know, we ask for their input. We want them to suggest changes. We want them to feel part of our work and part of our, honestly, our movement. It is a movement for a reason.
You know, I'm glad you said what you said about Boys and Girls Clubs, because I came into Boys and Girls Clubs when I lived in Chicago, and it was for two reasons. One was a sport, so it was athletics that brought me to the club. The second reason was violence. Now that doesn't sound very pleasant, but that was the reality of the kids in Chicago, where the clubs were that I worked around and with, as related to basketball. And it was because they brought kids to a location for me, and this is in full admission. It wasn't. I'm not proud of what this is going to say. How I'm going to say this, but it was a recruiting center for me. I was a competitive upper level basketball club coach, and I would go to Boys and Girls Clubs to recruit kids, because that's where they hung out after school. That's where they went before they went anyplace else. And then as I got deeper into it and really got success with recruiting there, I realized that some of these kids had knife wounds, bullet scars. I'm going, my God, what? You're 15. How do you have a bullet scar on your shoulder? Well, yep. I was standing at this place, and there's a drive-by, and I was fortunate. I go, what do you mean you were fortunate? You got shot in the shoulder. I didn't die.
That's very fair.
So,
or I was with the wrong person at the wrong time, who was affiliated with the wrong gang. Gang violence is very real too, especially for our communities of color where our clubs are located. It's just, you know, that's the reality of the world we live in. And I'm glad you found some of those young people who otherwise would not have explored the competitiveness of basketball, right? Because there's only so many spots on a high school basketball team or a middle school basketball team. And some youth, you know this, I mean, even I have stories of this when I was 13 or 14. If you get cut from a team, you know, we're not Michael Jordan. We don't think about Michael Jordan and his experience and go, I'll try again next year. what you do is you go, well, that sucked, and I'm not coming back to do this again. Clearly they don't think I'm good, so I must not be good, right? Those kinds of dialogue happen with a lot of young people. And I think clubs are a great place to do it. I went to the club for the first time on a military base, and I went to play basketball.
So when I made the transition and learned more, I was humbled and was really told the complete truth that you mentioned earlier about the clubs in the community and what they do with the adult experience and interaction. That's the real club. Yes, it's true. There are sports there, and there are some really good athletes there. But there's also violence that is brought to the club, and that they use the club as a place to have protection. Well, I broadened my scope and got to the reality of what I am, where I'm at today, in that it is what you said it is. And when you brought up your experience as a military brat, and you traveled around the country with your family, you had those experiences had to engage you with where you're at today and get you a frame of reference that are you sharing that with kids, that you came from the same place?
Absolutely. And sometimes I share it without even realizing it, because I'm a woman of color running a nonprofit, which is very rare in Denver, and maybe in a few other communities as well, but I can only speak to Denver. And when I visit some of our club sites, young people see me and I look like them, and that's really exciting too. I mean, I think that's what, without actually having to do anything, I'm hopefully encouraging them to realize themselves in positions similar to mine, that it's not unattainable, that it is a reality that they could look forward to. And, again, I grew up everywhere. I moved all the time. I always had to make new friends. I wish I'd had a club when I moved to the States for our final time down in Colorado Springs, but I found other ways to be involved, and that was through sports. I don't know where I would have been without sports, or some way to engage. And you think of sports, it's a team, it's a family, it's a different type of family.
Yeah.
And you forget how important that aspect is, and that some young people don't have it.
Well, that's a great segue. After I tell everybody that you're listening to KUHS Denver, we're streaming to you every Friday at 11 o'clock. Today I have a wonderful guest with me, Danielle Felder, Executive Director of Boys and Girls Clubs of Colorado. And with that, I mean, I'm very grateful, not only for you as a person in my life, but also just what we do together in support of Boys and Girls Club. But you mentioned basketball and sports and volleyball as well, sports being an anchor for you, whether it was with the club or without the club. So talk to me a little bit about those other family units that make up Boys and Girls Club activities. I know for me it was the robotics thing was really a surprise to me for some of the clubs. I thought that was really cool. So what are some of those other family units that are established through club programmatic activities that you want to highlight about Boys and Girls Club?
Absolutely. There's so many, but I'll just pick maybe 3 or 5 of our top, right? Because most people, when they come into a club, all they see and hear is the chaos, and they see the pool tables and the gym, and they just assume that no programming is really happening. But we do a lot of really great programs at the club. So I would say one of the absolute popular, it has a following in every club, it is done at every club, is arts. Arts and crafts is so important. I think we're all realizing how it can also help in that social emotional learning space, how it provides an outlet for young people who are not, sports inclined maybe, or not interested in volleyball, basketball, soccer, etc. The arts have always been a good go-to area for not just our young people, but for the staff who run those programs, who build really great relationships there. I would then highlight our STEM. So we do a lot of do-it-yourself STEM programs across the state. They're very responsive to the staff and their experience. We have staff who went to college for engineering and then decided, I don't want to be an engineer, I want to work with kids. And so, we bring them in, and they, like you mentioned, they do robotics, they do tech. They kind of share their passion with young people who maybe have never had that experience before. So our STEM programs are always a really close-knit community that varies across the state depending on who's teaching any particular program in that area. And then I would say the final one, we don't have a large percentage of teens, but the teens we do have.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry.
The teams we do have, oh, you're good. The teams we do have are an amazing group, right? These are awesome leaders. I get a chance to meet them once a year at the Youth of the Year that we hold for our statewide, right? I think you've had a chance to meet them, Lowell, as well. But our teen group, you know, they usually have teen centers or teen spaces within our clubs that are only for teens. And they create their own relationships amongst themselves, right? It's not just with an adult, but with their peers. You know, maybe they're getting bullied at school. Maybe they don't have a lot of friends at school. The club brings together so many different school districts, so many different young people from different backgrounds to have a chance to connect with others. Just because you don't have friends at your current school doesn't mean you can't have friends or you're not able to make friends elsewhere. And that's, I think, what the clubs provide too, and especially during these COVID times, you know, that isolation is very real. We as adults feel it and understand it. Young people feel it too, and they're less capable sometimes of maybe handling that particular feeling or how to think about addressing that feeling of isolation that can result from not connecting with others.
Daniel, there's many programmatic things that Boys and Girls Clubs do for the kids in the community, and also connecting the community through that programmatic effort. But there's also the issues that the young adults, the teenagers, and even the middle schoolers who might have siblings that are teenagers they're all there together as a family unit, waiting for mom and dad to come off work or whatever the case may be. So there are some advocacy issues that are very centralized to Boys and Girls Clubs efforts in the state of Colorado that come out of the insights you gain from each club. Like Colorado State or Colorado Springs is different than, say, Denver Metro or Fort Collins or any of the mountain clubs that might be out there in Leadville or Fairplay or wherever it might be. Talk a little bit about your advocacy effort and those issues that are really rising to the top, especially being, highlighted during COVID times. We've gotten just a little bit more volume and sense of urgency on some of these issues. So share with us some of those issues on the advocacy level that are really highlighted right now.
Absolutely, and Lowell, you highlight a really good point there. There are so many issues, and they all look different across communities. And really my role is to find that common ground, to figure out what are some of these underlying issues that we could potentially address at the statewide level with our legislators, with our government officials. How can we help, promote the social welfare of young people? How do we do that? Because they aren't necessarily represented at the Capitol themselves. And so we don't want to speak for them, we want to speak with them, and that's really important. In terms of what bubbles up to the top recently, I think you're seeing a lot of this, and it probably goes without saying, but health and wellness is it is a advocacy pillar that is so important. Every single conversation with a young person right now about what is going on in your community, what are the struggles, what are other young people concerned about? Mental health. Suicide has come up many times. Substance abuse has come up many times. These are kind of the reality of and in fact, I would say some of all of our communities across the state, really exacerbated by COVID. And so we have been working diligently in our advocacy to figure out ways to identify and fix some of those issues, right? Our most recent bill that we are really excited that's at it's on the governor's desk, is our 5th day community provider bill, which is to help support community providers who are stepping in for that 5th day when school districts are closing, right? A lot of schools, in fact, Colorado, as I'm sure many of you know, leads the nation in 4-day school districts right now. It is a thing that is staying and it is growing in our state. And some young people don't have anywhere to go that's safe on the 5th day. They have parents who work 2 or 3 jobs, or they have parents who neglect and don't want to be around them on that day. And we have to find places to help them grow. And so our clubs are open to provide that for them so that they can do their tutoring, so they can ensure that their grades are going to be at the level they should be, to make sure that they can get to club, providing transportation so that they can get there. All of those issues kind of come together in our advocacy. What we heard from clubs was, we're having a hard time offering that 5th day for free. and we have to charge something because we're talking about a full day of staffing, and we have to provide the meals and snacks, and we have to be open for 8 to 10 hours. And sometimes it's done so quickly that our clubs don't have time to prepare for that. And so this was really a work across 7 of our different organizations. We have 17 in the state, of 7 organizations that this really impacted. And so we worked hard with the majority of the House, Representative Escar, as well as the Senate President, Senator Garcia, on what could this look like and how can we put this forward, both of whom are actually from Pueblo, which is all 4-day school districts. So, we are looking at those next possible areas to address. We're excited about Representative Herod and Senator Garcia's bill for outdoor equity. That particular program is something we have been trying to run around our young people who don't get a chance to experience the outdoors. We live in Colorado, and I think you would be surprised the number of young people you could talk to who live close to some of our outdoor areas and have never been hiking, have never been fishing, have never, picked up a mountain bike, gone on a bike ride, those kinds of things, because there are barriers to doing that, to actually accessing those resources. And so, clubs are there to help provide that. We've been doing that for a while. So we're very excited about seeing that bill come through.
So that's
it definitely hit our advocacy agenda really high around health and wellness.
That's a great segue to talk about advocacy and community, because the community gets you the awareness about the issues that are of need for these kids. It's personified at the club because you see it, it's real, and then you have agencies or corporations or sports franchises that have their own interest in some of these advocacy issues. What's it like to connect your advocacy issues that are similar to somebody else's advocacy issues, and that someone else could be a funding source for you? Is that important and relevant for you to make these connections in the community at the funding level as well?
Absolutely. It's at a couple different levels. I'll actually start just at the coalition partner level. We are starting to see more youth serving organizations at the Capitol and more organizations focused around needs of young people. But for a long time, Boys and Girls Clubs was the only one. And we were the only voice. And it's really hard to be the only voice and make a lot of change happen. And so what I would say is the influence and power of coalition and partners like sports franchises, like some of our larger funders and foundations make a difference. People listen to those organizations sometimes more than they'll listen to us. And so it's nice to be able to have those kinds of partnerships. And like you mentioned, with funding, we're nonprofits, right? We can't do this without the funding. I can't be employed unless someone is paying my salary and ensuring that I can focus on our advocacy efforts. So we rely really heavily on those who agree with our advocacy platform, who want to be part of this work with us, want to come up with ideas with us, and are willing to invest in our work to get it done. And I think that's really how those partnerships work really well for us on the advocacy side.
So if I understand you correctly, you've got the Boys and Girls Clubs, there are different locations around the state, and they're dealing with the day-to-day, boots on the ground, feed the kids, entertain them, educate them, supplement everything that they do outside of the club, in addition to, family dynamics in some cases. And then you've got the work that's being done to go to the legislators, watch the federal laws, because I'm going to imagine, nationally, Boys and Girls Clubs has an information conduit back to you about what's going on at the federal level and how it may or may not influence Colorado. But for sure, your state and local level funding mechanism through advocating issues necessary for kids to be safe. So what's the feedback mechanism for you from the clubs to you about these issues? What are they doing to give you the insights and the information that you can bring to the Capitol?
Absolutely. So just to kind of expand on what you're saying there, well, we have 17 club organizations in the state of Colorado that serve our young people across, I think we're represented in about 31 communities, which is roughly 18 counties here in the state. So we're not everywhere, but we're pretty, widely located in some of our more populous areas. Those 17 organizations, what usually happens is I visit them. I visit them every year. I talk to the leadership, I talk to the staff, I try and talk to the young people as well, but I rely really heavily on leadership and staff to give me some direction on what they're hearing from parents and youth, because they do their own advisory boards, they do their own surveys in that work. We were fortunate enough this year to actually start our own statewide youth advocacy council, so I'm really trying to bring in the youth voice to help direct our advocacy efforts. Because at the end of the day, I work to support our clubs. You know, I am not an individual who's just saying that this is what clubs need and this is what we want. I'm saying, no, this is what we are seeing in our communities. This is what we, the clubs, want to help address for our communities and how we can do it. And I move forward with our advocacy efforts on that front. So it's a two-way communication. You know, I also let clubs know what is moving with some of our partners, what are some concerns and efforts that are going to be coming down. The ESSER funding is a really great example of some federal funding we're all trying to figure out that has made it to the statewide level and should be used to support summer enrichment and after-school programs that we're trying to figure out how we can access that in order to ensure that we're serving as many young people as we can with the best quality program that we can.
So Danielle, if I'm, let's take a hypothetical. If I'm a business entity that has a philanthropic mindset, so I've created some other not-for-profit, like a foundation or a trust or something that I'm putting money in, and I'm going to make my decision about who I'm going to give some money to. But my passion is about that fifth-day service and support for kids at the educational level. And I want to make sure that kids are taken care of, that there's no latchkey accidents, that kids are really properly taken care of, and they have a place to go safely. And I'm about ready to put my money out there. Shouldn't they know about you?
I hope they would, but at the same time, it's what I said at the beginning. Our clubs are community-based. So sometimes for our companies who are located in maybe just one or two communities, there's a club that makes sense for them. They want to keep their focus on that community. Their community is where they're interested in investing their dollars. And I appreciate that. And I'm not here to say that you should not invest in your local Boys and Girls Club. That is 110% who should be getting your money, since they are doing that work for your community and getting you your results. What I would say, though, is for some of our larger companies who are more statewide, who interact across multiple communities, that would be, you know, something that we should definitely talk about at the statewide level. Because a lot of my work outside of the advocacy is around statewide initiatives and programs. And how do we support more than just one club at a time, doing sometimes similar work? How can we actually support all 17, or all 10, or all 8? Who are doing this work, and we can show you impact at a statewide level rather than just impact at a community level. Not that there isn't value in that, there is. It's just a matter of how deep into the forest are you going to go, and how far up would you like to be when you're thinking about your investment in philanthropic dollars. And it varies across companies, and I can appreciate that the philosophy is different across companies as well.
Okay, so I'm a fast food franchisee, and I have 6 franchises in a community. What would you say to the people that go to the Boys or Girls Club in my community about contacting that fast food person and saying, do you support Boys and Girls Clubs? Would you support Boys and Girls Clubs? And if the answer is, well, I've never heard anything about it, and why are you asking me? Is it part of the thing to do that community members advocate for you and ask their regional businesses, big or small or medium or big, that have funds that want to. God, I'm tongue-tied here. I'm just so excited about this because I think there's a messaging that is missing in the communities, because you're connected with school systems that supply you with after-school space, as well as community centers that might be after-school space for Boys and Girls Club. And that's a big job to maintain and manage. it's just one more thing on the list to say, hey, let's create a marketing campaign and everybody in the club has to participate. That becomes a bit arduous, but I'm wondering if the kids, the moms and dads, when they go to the fast food places for treats and meals and stuff, if they're empowered by you to ask the question.
I would say yes, and the best way to probably describe how that happens on a community basis is each of our orgs is their own nonprofit. So each org has their own board of directors. They have their own advisory boards. They have their own parent advisory boards sometimes. They have their own youth boards and youth projects that they're running. And so those groups will all coalesce into one Boys and Girls Club organization. And those groups are the ones who go out and ask their community for that support and that help. Usually I will get kind of brought into the conversation if a company is coming to the table saying, you know, I really want to support you guys, but I also want to support these 5, 6 others. How can I do that effectively, right? Because as a company, the last thing you want to do is be paying out your money to 5 different organizations, getting 5 different reports and 5 different contacts and trying to keep track of what impact you're making, when you could just go through someone like Boys and Girls Clubs in Colorado and see your impact across the larger picture of, yes, we had 5 club orgs that represented 10 club sites. There were 3,000 young people served. This is what the demographics look like. This is what the free and reduced lunch was. You know, we can kind of break all of that down for some of our larger corporations. Usually fast food tends to be across communities, so that's an easier one to explain. But there are plenty of organizations and fast casual restaurants who support their local clubs in different ways.
It's interesting. What we're talking about is not something new and different to a lot of philanthropic organizations. The struggle to raise money and identify those who are in alignment with your causes, that support what you do. And as you said earlier, you have competition now, so to speak. You know, there are people asking for the pot of money to be divided up in many more parts than it used to be years ago for child advocacy and child safety, because it's important. It's an important thing to do. What I'm interested in is making sure that you and what you have to say is clearly understood by people I don't think really realize. Unless, like me, I recruited there. I had a reason to go there, and I learned more than, I'm grateful for the learning I've gotten and how I participate now. But I want to make sure that the people, our listeners, understand that the Boys and Girls Clubs are more than just a place to go hang out and get fed. Mm-hmm. And that typically, when I first met it, that was what kids were telling me. And that was part of the time as well. It was back in the late 80s and early 90s. And it's grown and developed quite a lot since then. And that's what I want to make sure people understand. There's an educational component. There's a, like, especially with the teens, there's a health and wellness life component that's huge and part of that. I mean, gosh, you guys, I've even seen cooking classes to help families with nutritional things. I've seen teenagers do programs that their moms and dads were sitting in front of them learning about financial literacy.
Yes.
So help me understand the full connection of programmatic emphasis. Health and wellness is a big part. Sports, we mentioned that as well. What else is added to that list of components?
I mean, Boys and Girls Clubs really has grown in the 130, 150 years we've been around, right? There are some programs that have been around that long. Basketball and sports is definitely one of them. But we've also grown to more evidence-based programs. We really do want to use research to help create positive outcomes for young people. So many of our organizations implement evidence-based programs like Positive Action or Project Learn, both of which are meant to foster positive thinking, positive development, prevention, and discussions around substance abuse and use, and why you make certain decisions or why you don't make certain decisions. Smart Moves has always been around for us, but it's evidence informed, and we're really trying to make that transition to being more substantive in our program and our research, because for years Boys and Girls Clubs has had the data to back up our work. We've just been pretty bad about communicating it or sharing it or talking about how we're doing it. And so, you know, those prevention programs, I think, are a huge component right now. Tutoring is most certainly a large part of our work right now because of COVID. We've had a lot of what we call remote learning centers pop up, which is when the schools were closed during COVID, Boys and Girls Clubs were open. We were providing technology and Wi-Fi and computers and other equipment to young people who did not have access to it. Or worse than that, to young people who didn't even know what school they were supposed to be at and couldn't figure out how to get connected. You know, we were there to help them do that because, you know, if you're not even on the school network, then no one can help you, and that's where Boys and Girls Clubs comes in. So I would also, you know, argue that our technology outreach for communities has been really influential and impactful during COVID as well. I've already mentioned arts, but it's worth another say again because it's just another area that encourages good leadership and development. And then, of course, our character and work readiness programs. We have leadership programs. We have Keystone and Torch Clubs, which are focused on volunteering. They're focused on service. They do a lot of work around grooming young people to be leaders, to be independent thinkers, to want to further themselves and their academic careers. And then, of course, we have workforce readiness because, Lowell, I think you and I have talked about this before, but not everyone is meant for a 4-year degree. Not everyone is meant to go to a traditional college. And I keep bringing up COVID, but it really has changed so much in how we approach education and our after-school environment. But COVID also made it clear that you might be paying the same amount for some remote learning that you may not be very good at. And that's another consideration that our young people have to think about. And so we do a lot of work around workforce readiness in our clubs, including interview prep, job prep, resume prep. We do apprenticeship pathways. Yep. We try and connect young people with college tours. Many of our clubs actually offer them free college tours for anywhere in the state and provide the transportation so they can go see those colleges. So, you know, we're doing a lot of different, a lot of wraparound services, I guess, for young people. Because at the end of the day, while we provide safe spaces, at some point this young person's going to turn 18. Yeah. They're no longer going to be able to go to a club. And we want to say that when they turned 18, we were able to give them all the tools to lead a healthy life, to make good choices, and to have some sort of dream future planned out in some way, shape, or form. So that when they turn 18, they're not just left to themselves in the end of a cliff wondering what they're supposed to do. That is not what the club is about. We do not abandon young people as soon as they turn 18. And so everything we do is in preparation for them becoming adults. And how do we make them the best adults they can be in their communities and in their lives?
Well, and the testament to that nationally is that those young adults don't abandon you. They come back. And they share, whether it's in the community that they were raised in or they go to another community and connect with another Boys and Girls Club. I have seen it, you have seen it. It's pervasive across the country with Boys and Girls Club. And as I say that, I'm just going to remind our audience that, you know, we talk on 360 Performance about performance issues, but today I want to make sure you understand that the Boys and Girls Clubs is a foundational component for getting started, to create ideas and mindsets in young people that were perhaps the first time they ever thought about it, the first time they ever got a chance to think about something other than high school and a job. It may be high school and a career, high school and a college degree. And performance requires a shot of energy to ignite the potential that then turns into results that are beyond what is expected. And I want to make sure everybody understands the rationale behind bringing Danielle to the show today and talking about this, because there are also events in our life that happen that ignite and energize us. Well, there's going to be some energy igniting Boys and Girls Clubs in July with the All-Star Game. The Major League Baseball has decided to bring the All-Star Game to Denver on July the 12th. And with that, a group called the Players Alliance, which is a MLB funded foundation whose president is Curtis Granderson, who interestingly enough I know a little bit about. So he and his roster,
Of course, you will.
yeah, his roster are going to come to Denver and bring their big semi-trailer truck and visit some boys and girls clubs. And when they do that, they do advocacy work. They mentor kids. They bring in ideas about community and about teamwork. So they're going to pass out equipment, brand new Russell and Rawlings equipment for free to the kids. Baseball gloves, balls, cleats, hats, helmets, just because they want to promote the game and make sure kids are given the best quality chance they can. Now, that being said, as a shameless endorsement for a lot of things, there's also too big is too much. And that's my phrase for when you've got the needs of kids and the business behind Major League Baseball or any professional sport. My concern is the message gets diluted and the kids get lost. Now, you might still see Boys and Girls Clubs, Major League Baseball, All-Star Game, all these banners and things getting people's attention, but what's the message? The message is what we've already talked about. The message is about safety, about health and wellness, about resume preparation and interviewing and all the things that make the kids better at being themselves. Not diminishing the event at all, but emphasizing that as the All-Star Game comes to town, remember why it was brought here. It was brought here because Atlanta was taken away, because the rights of every voter were being infringed upon or discussed in a way that wasn't fair and grounded in our Constitution. So, that political message being put to the side, Atlanta has been taken away as a site for the All-Star Game this year, and that's how Denver got it. The message for Boys and Girls Club and the people that want to sponsor it is that the game is about kids. That's what Players Alliance is about, making sure kids have a choice of a great game that is an American game, and if they choose not to have baseball, then go to volleyball or basketball at a Boys and Girls Club. They give you the ability to foundationally understand what your choices are and give you such choices. So Danielle, when you hear me talk about all these wonderful things that are coming, how do you prevent the message not to be diluted when you participate in these events?
That's a very big question. Anytime you're dealing with a large national foundation company, it is always very hard to dig into some of the specific philanthropy and why it's done. And I think at the end of the day, we appreciate the MLB. Our national network, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, has a wonderful partnership with them at the high level. And with the Players Alliance coming into town, we're also appreciative of all of the donations that they're making to our clubs and the work they want to do to promote our clubs. But really, at the end of the day, we want to make sure the players are connected to these services, right? Because the players themselves also sometimes have their own foundations. The players themselves also see themselves in these young people. I think that's really probably the key, is when the players make a connection like that. Because you can have an all-star at 11 who is the next coming of Acuna, for example.
Yeah.
That's what I know right now. I'm just talking about Atlanta, so I'm going to go with Acuna. Right? But if he doesn't have the support to stay out of trouble, to make good decisions, if he doesn't have the parents who can help fund some of that, club or some of the ability to get in front of the right people, then all of that talent is for nothing. All of that mindset is really for nothing, if we're being honest. And so at the clubs, I think what the Players Alliance and what MLB sees is how you can provide a holistic approach to ensuring that young people have bright futures, right? And I think in order not to dilute that message, we continue to form stronger relationships individually with players from the MLB, from the Alliance themselves, and continue to grow that partnership so that the message is out there. I don't think you'd be surprised, but the number of club kids that probably are MLB players is pretty amazing too. I don't have that number off the top of my head. That's something that I have to find from national, but there's a reason why the MLB supports the Boys and Girls Clubs, and I can almost promise and guarantee it's because it is similar to what you found, Lowell, a pipeline of young people who end up in the national ranks, and we all know how hard that is too. That there's very few who make it that far.
Yeah, it's less than 2% nationally, and that's a number that goes across almost any sport, but it's particularly applies to Major League Baseball. 2% chance or less that you will get an invitation to the dance. I know one player. Well, he's an alum now, but I know one MLB player that was Boys and Girls Club member, and he's the president of the Players Alliance. And we'll be. You've given me a question to ask when I see them in July. That's one of my first questions. Were you a member of the Boys and Girls Club? Oh, which one? Where was it? So we can make some real quick personal references to the list when we get it.
And I have to say, usually that's how it plays out with our companies, with national affiliates, is someone in a leadership role went to a club, had a great experience at a club, and wants to give back because they understand what a club does. And that is usually the connection that is most important. It's sometimes hard to identify, and I appreciate that you understand it gets diluted in all of the big, grandstanding that happens. But I do think on at least a local level, we know, and our community knows that investment, and we are, putting ourselves in a really great position to support kids.
In the days to come, I'll be letting our audience know about the locations, the Boys and Girls Club facilities that will be visited by Players Alliance in July when they come through in their support of the Home Run Derby and then the All-Star Game. They will be doing exactly what I said, coming into those locations, talking to the members, talking to the staff about what the PA's purpose is and how they won't be a one-off. They'll come back again. They'll be visiting every single baseball franchise city in the United States, which is 30+ franchises, and they'll do it every single year. They'll be finishing their first full year of service in the next few months, with the Denver All-Star Game being kind of a launch of the 2021 season for them. They've obviously been to some other locations, field locations prior to now, but July's a big deal with the All-Star Game, so that they can continue to talk about why they're here. They're getting a lot of attention, and with that, it will give Boys and Girls Club some attention, because I'll make sure it does.
Yes, and that's what it's about too. Look, community member who knows what we do and wants to communicate that. I mean, that's what we rely on. Even with our young people who come to us, it's usually because a sibling has gone, it's because their parents went, and they know the power and impact of clubs. That's our network.
Well, and what we're going to be, as we get closer to the end of the show today, I want to make sure we talk a little bit about the All-Star Game, but also about how important it is for you to participate. If you are a baseball fan and you're going to go to the All-Star Game, listen to the show and find out about when they're going to be visiting. PA is going to visit the Boys and Girls Clubs in the Denver metro area. And then also understand that we'll be giving out literature. Get involved. Be a voice. Talk to your local politicians, school district people. Talk to your politicians that represent your districts at the House level as well as at the Senate level, so that they pay attention to these referendums that are being brought forward. The one that Danielle mentioned earlier about the 5th-day support that they need for kids, because a lot of school districts are 4-day, and they're not going to have a 5th day of service available. So we want to be able to fund the Boys and Girls Club's presence in that 5th day. If you've got a politician that you know, tell them, get on that referendum and that bill, and make sure it goes forward. So Danielle, my next question as we close for today is, what are some of the top 3 obstacles that are evolving? Now, I'm not talking about fundraising. I'm talking about what gets in the way of fundraising or club operations. What are the top 3 things that that you really want the community to know about that gets in our way, that they may be able to impact?
You know, I would say I don't know if it's going to be three. I'll try to break it down into three. Funding was one, so I'm going to take that one off the table then. It's always one for a nonprofit. We talk about funding every day. So I would say, you know, finding and cultivating our champions in the community, that is an obstacle. You know, it's amazing how hard it is sometimes, especially in some of our smaller communities, for us to have strong relationships with school districts. You know, that in Colorado, we're one of, you know, a few states where so much autonomy happens at the local school district level that it's really hard to ensure that schools know that Boys and Girls Clubs are here to support them, that we want to work alongside them. Because maybe someone had a bad experience with a Boys and Girls Club way back when, or they've never been to a Boys and Girls Club and they only know, oh, it's loud, there's all these kids running around, you're not really doing anything. You know, those kinds of attitudes that we run into sometimes with schools, with employers even, with other partners. You know, we want to change that message. And I think, you know, we've been around long enough that it's changed for the most part, but if I'm talking to someone in the community about what they could do to help us address that obstacle, knowing who your local Boys and Girls Club organization is and being able to talk about it to someone who maybe doesn't have a great impression of us and encouraging them to come by a club and actually have a see as to what we're doing with our young people, you know, that is one of those obstacles, finding and cultivating our champions, right? Both at the local level and at the state level, right? Because we have to, you know, identify our representatives and senators at the Capitol and our government officials who are going to be champions and advocates for us. And I think we've done a really good job this year. We've been able to make a lot of progress with the governor's office. We have some wonderful champions in his office with Allie Kimmel and Scott Grogensky. We have the Attorney General, Phil Weiser, who's done an amazing job and is dedicated to helping young people. And we're really excited to partner with his office over the next few years. And then, of course, we have the representatives and senators who sponsor bills for us, who bring us into conversations and let us be at the table to talk about what's going on and give them information. So I think finding, cultivating champions is, you know, top obstacle and one of the easiest ones that I think community can help with.
Let's dwell on that one. Let's keep it at that then, because I want to ask you then to tell me about what's one location in the Denver metro area you would recommend people visit as a club. Which location?
Oh, but there's so many.
I know, there's a lot.
There's so many that they could go to. And right now, I don't know that clubs are open to visitors, so please be aware of that. Before I tell you to go find your local Boys and Girls Clubs, you should call ahead and make sure they're actually seeing visitors and need volunteers. Don't just show up, because you probably won't get in. Man, which club would I recommend in Denver? You know, I'm going to go with, you know, the most recent club I went to, actually, off of Santa Fe. It's Inca. It's off of Inca Street.
Yeah.
I believe it's the Cole Club, and please excuse me, Metro Denver. I apologize if I've gotten it wrong and replaced it with someone else, but I believe it's the Cole Club. It is wonderful. When you walk into this club, it has an amazing basketball court that the Denver Nuggets helped develop and come in and work with young people with and on. We have, I believe they have a recording studio in there where they do art and music and encourage young people to play instruments and learn instruments and think about what they want to do in the music industry. They have a great gym facility. They have a really large art room, if I'm remembering correctly, as well as a really large tech room. They just have kind of everything you want to see in a club. And when you walk in, you will be overwhelmed because as a typical standalone clubhouse, we have that big front area with all the pool tables and all of the snooker boards. And you know, there's a lot of activity happening at around 3 o'clock. But most programming gets started once we've given young people a chance to get out all their energy from sitting in a classroom all day around 4. And you know, if you come in at that time, you're going to see the different classrooms that are running and the different programs we have.
The Cole Club is a great pick because that club will be visited by the Players Alliance.
I figured.
Yeah,
It's a great club.
It's
I mean,
one
it's
of
right
three.
there on Santa Fe. People don't even know it's there. You can drive right by it. I know I have, and not even know that it's a clubhouse. It's on Santa Fe and 8th. It's like right there, like right between 8th and 7th. So, you know, make sure you're looking out for it when you're driving down Santa, or not, I'm sorry, it's not Santa, is it Santa Fe? It is Santa Fe.
Yeah, it's Santa Fe.
It's Santa Fe. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I was like, is it Santa Fe? Hold on. 8th. It's on 8th, but it's right before Santa Fe.
So
8th, right before Santa
so
Fe.
give
driving down 8th, headed to I-25, or towards 6th Ave to I-25. It's down that stretch on 8th.
give everybody the website that could help them identify some of the things we talked about today, as well as getting a listing of clubs.
Yeah. They can actually go to our website. So if you do coloradoboysandgirlsclubs.org, we have a find your club option.
Excellent.
And we have highlighted for everyone those clubs, their website, so you can easily find your community. Click on their website, it'll take you right there. Metro Denver is, of course, our large organization here in the Denver area, and they have a really awesome tool where you just type in your zip code, and they will tell you exactly which club is next to you or close to you, and then they give you information on the director there, who you can contact to be a volunteer. It's all, you know, very interesting and straightforward for Metro Denver. If you're interested in our advocacy effort, I would say, please look at our website. We have a newsletter. We are sending out advocacy newsletters. We've started that process to give people updates about what we're doing. So please sign up. We appreciate it. And any support you wanted to give around our advocacy, I'd welcome a conversation.
Thank you, Danielle. Always a pleasure to have you in my world at any time. The mission and message today was to talk about child safety as it relates to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Colorado and their wonderful work in both boots on the ground, helping their lives be better, as well as at the legislative level, looking for raising awareness to the issues of interest to keep kids' safety and funding those appropriate issues. I'm so grateful for your friendship and your participation in my world, Danielle. Take care today. Be well, First Mom. This is awesome.
Thank you. It's Friday. Thank you for having me. Well, it's always lovely to chat with you, and your passion and commitment to our kids and our work is, you know, it's something I want to foster in more people, to have more of these conversations. So always happy to be here, and
we'll keep building. We'll keep building you We'll keep building
very soon.
Yes.
Maybe?
Oh, in person. Yes. Yes. So everybody have a great day today. It's a wonderful day in Colorado. Let's make it happen today because the rain might come in this weekend. So enjoy the day, every moment it brings you. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening.